Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. In this episode, we're talking about effective communication, tackling challenging leadership conversations. I know, communication's everything. And what I find is most of you don't enjoy the challenging conversations. Let me tell you something. No one does. The key is understanding how to approach it, how to master it, how to win at it. And when we say, how do we win a challenging leadership conversation? I guess I would say that the key to defining what a winning challenging conversation is, you have to define the outcome that you're hoping for. Because what a win for me is might not be a win for you. So my ideal win when I'm having a challenging conversation, and usually a challenging conversation we call challenging because there's some form of conflict. There's something that we're going to say or do, and we are worried how it's going to be perceived by the other. So the idea of what truly a winning, challenging conversation is to come to an agreement at the end that is some form of a balanced resolution. That's the win. The win is not if let's just say I go in a room and I talk to one of my managers, and maybe the conversation with the manager is, I found that you're stealing hours from me. And so that's really challenging. So all of a sudden, I have to go confront that I have a manager that's lying on their timesheet. Let's just take that as the example. Well, I want to be very cautious with how I handle that challenging conversation, because obviously we want to make sure that we're not creating more waves in our ocean. But we also need to handle this and resolve this. So typically, the first part of that would be, what do I want to accomplish from this conversation? Well, one, I want to bring to the attention the concern that timesheets have not been accurate. Two, I want to present the data to the person. Three, I want to allow them to present their perspective, their side, their data, their research. And four, I want us to come to a conclusion or a resolution or a shared agreement on how to move forward. I want to be crystal clear. I am not saying that the win is them being happy about it. They're not going to be happy about it. But I want to be respectful. I want to be as non-emotional as possible. And that's hard for me because I am fire through and through. I am your Leo baby that just wants to burst. I'm that like redheaded fire symbol through and through. So believe me, I was literally on the phone this morning with a manager, and it's so funny because when you're talking to a colleague or a manager about someone else, it's easy to vent and let the fire come out. And boy, did I. And that's just releasing tension. And usually the tension is something's not going right and I care and I don't know how to resolve this once and for all. But when I'm approaching a true conversation or communication with someone that's really a challenging and direct communication, that's where I have to be as calm as a cucumber. I have to be in a state of just, hey, the purpose of this communication is not to express my emotion. The purpose of this communication is to drive sometimes accountability. Sometimes it's shared understanding. Sometimes it's coming up with a strategy on how to approach the next steps of whatever that conflict is. And so in the example of, I have an employee or a leader that I feel or I believe has lied on their time card. And for the sake of this example, we're going to say it's the first time this has happened. The first thing I'm going to do is gather my data. Okay, got it. The data really shows something happened. Then I go to that employee and I say, I'd like to bring some new details to your attention. And typically, what I'm going to start is, I really want to validate your role with this company. There are many things that I feel you are doing very well. But recently, some information has come to my attention and I've done some research. And I want to bring it to you today with the hope that we can both look at it, find out the truth, find out the reality, and figure out the next steps to a resolution. And so it's come to my attention that your time card is not matching up with your time at our company. This is all the information that's been presented to me. I really want to give you the opportunity to share. Maybe there was something mixed up. Maybe you didn't recognize. Maybe you didn't figure it out. I'm not here to accuse you, but I am here to say that there's information that clearly dictates that there was a mistake made in your hours. And so I want to give you the opportunity to either provide feedback right now, or if you think it's better, I also understand if you want to kind of take the next couple of days, put together some information, and let's come back together. This is not about putting you on trial. This is about making sure that our policies are being followed, that we're in alignment, and if in any way there's a mix-up, a mistake, or something's come up, that we correct the situation together for everyone's benefit. How does that sound? So again, this is very generic, but my point is, in that first communication, I want to give that employee the benefit of the doubt. I want to hope that maybe there was a mix up. Maybe it was an honest, common mistake. If that person is truly doing something that is criminal, then obviously there are times where you just have to, it's a direct fire. It's a this or a that. We had a clinician that was billing for hours, and there were a couple patients of this clinician that said the services um, never occurred. We had to do research, and we came back with inconclusive evidence. And what we ultimately need to say is that if that employee could not show for a fact that they delivered that, whether it be notes, documentation, signatures, or whatever, then we would have to terminate contract because we did not have proof we had a patient saying the following. So sometimes there are serious repercussions, but it is critical when we bring that up. I'm still giving that person the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying you did this. I'm saying help me help you. Truly. Let's figure out what went wrong here, and let's figure out if we can, what that next step looks like. So I think it's important that you understand that conflict happens everywhere. Conflict happens at your home, your kids, your siblings, your this, your that. There's a difference between conflict and someone doing something criminal or someone doing something wrong. But I believe conflict, when it comes down to two different disagreements, can be handled in a very positive way if we respect each other. We see it all the time with work. We see it all the time with social media. Conflict's natural. Reasons for conflict are miscommunication, different perspectives, opinions, different objectives. When conflict doesn't get resolved, it's because one or both parties are more focused on being right than finding a resolution. And I say it in this way. Have you ever been in a room where politics gets brought up? That is so challenging because we've got sometimes two entities that are so passionate that they truly believe fundamentally the opposite of each other in some circumstances. And they don't know how to just say, I respect you, I love you, I know your intention is good. And we're just going to agree to disagree. We don't have to agree. And so sometimes conflict resolution is about just granting that ability for someone to believe what they want to believe. You want to believe that dogs should be able to be purple and fly? Okay, that's okay. You want to believe that whatever that belief system is. And so that's where we have issues. That's where we have conflict. And I'll give you an example. And this is kind of a stretch, but have you ever been in a work environment where someone has a religious garb and someone else is uncomfortable around that religious garb? And it can become conflict. It can become a really uncomfortable situation. And ideally, you're able to come to an understanding of like, how can we make that person feel accepted? And how can you accept their way of being? Like, is it affecting you? Is it doing anything to you? Is it, at the end of the day, um, and there is a difference between religious garb and someone wearing a shirt that says F you on it and you're offended by that. And at the same time, you could say, don't look at the shirt. I don't know what to say. But understanding conflict is this differential between viewpoints, perspectives, etc. And I think there's a way to find resolution in most conflict if the goal of both is to say, we want to find peace with each other, even if that means that we have two different ways that we function. And that's important. But when we're building a team, part of building a team is discovering how one handles conflict, discovering the way that people work together, who they work together with. Sometimes it's a matter of like two people are not meant to be on the same team, and that's okay. It's interesting because I have a client right now, and the client, I had done the preliminary, and very transparently, I could see that their communication style and my communication style are not a fit. However, I'm not the one directly working with this practice. I have an employee working with this practice, and their communication's perfect. So what I do is I actually overcompensate in the sense that I say, I don't want to create conflict because I recognize my communication's different. I don't think that they don't like me, but I think that they aren't as comfortable with me. And as a result, I'm not as comfortable with them. That's okay. That's why we have other people. That's why we acknowledge the difference in communication, style, approach, all those different things. That's part of solving conflict, is knowing how to move past it, knowing how to move through it, and sticking with the idea that in order to resolve conflict, we remove emotion and we align with purpose. I want that practice to thrive. I want them to get the best service ever. I would rather that practice owner hate me and have my team elevate them to the next gear where they feel good about everything than feeling that I need them because I'm the private practice coach to be respected or this or that. No, truly in my heart, I want to do right in this world. And in order to do right, you got to recognize you aren't a fit for everyone, because there are people where you're doing right is wrong for them and you have to find that right match. But just because I'm not a right match doesn't mean there aren't other people. And that's why we bring resources and surround us with people that complement us. You know, I last year I had a consultant come to me and they're like, look, I want to work with you, or I want to work for you. And I said, why? Well, I want to be you. I'm like, well, I don't want you to be me. I want you to be you. I believe it is so important that each and every one of us shine in our own light. This idea of like, I want to be next to, Ben Stiller so I can be the next comedian, Jewish comedian in film. No, I need to be Brandon Seigel. You need to be you. Your employees need to be them. You're not hiring them to groom them into a robotic you. You're hiring them to bring about something that you don't already have. It's a blooming flower. Each person in your organization represents a petal. And the idea is that you're crafting petals that complement each other and that you know how to understand when conflict occurs. So, how do we make the best of a challenging situation? First thing, we need to be more aware. We need to understand that everyone is different. We need to respect each and every other's differences. So you come to me and you say, Brandon, I believe that private practices don't deserve to make a profit. I don't believe it. They should be working for society and they should not make a dime as a benefit. And let's say that's that mindset. And my mindset is I don't think that there is a better thing that someone should prosper off of than changing people's lives and how they function. I would pay endless amount of money to solve the cancer problem. I would pay endless amounts of money to solve different neurology impairments and Down syndrome and all these different things that affect people. There is not a price I wouldn't pay to create greater healthcare in others. However, we've got two different mindsets. One mindset is this is a servant leadership field and money shouldn't play a part. And my mindset is money should play a part because money is what motivates others to move farther. And by fueling money, we're going to advance and provide more than we are without money. But I have to respect that other person's decision. What I have to understand is just because I respect their different opinion, do they have it in them to respect me? You know, I recently had a disagreement with my own family, my mom. We have some different belief systems. That's okay. I said to her, I said, do you believe I have evil intent? She said, no. I said, so no matter what the disagreement of our belief, we actually agree on the same thing. We want good in this world. We just disagree how to get that. And she's like, you're right. So we respect each other for that. Part of conflict resolution is acknowledging it's okay to disagree with me. So I always tell people, I actually preface a lot of conversations with, I don't want to offend. And sometimes people will say, Brandon, like, cut the bullshit and just talk to me. And I'm like, no, I want to make it known. I want to make it known that I truly have the most positive intention, but I'm okay to be wrong. I don't want to disrespect. I don't want to invalidate. I don't want to. We all have biases, whether we know it or not. I believe that part of our problem in society is we will always have an unconscious bias. We will. And I'm sorry for that. And every day we work to try and improve that, but that's the reality. But part of that is granting the ability for someone to be who they want to be, giving them the fuel to say, I don't care that we disagree. Let's find a middle ground. But they have to give you that same amount. So if you give that to them and they're like, well, no, I'm right or you're done, it's not going to go anywhere. So you got to make sure that they have the same desire. Is their desire to find peace or is their desire to win? And by winning, they believe that winning is them being right. Whereas me, winning is moving past the conflict. So we need to understand that there is a pattern to how most people handle conflict. I am a huge believer in conflict resolution, and there are different tools out there. I happen to really like this tool called the Thomas-Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument, TKI. And it allows you to assess an individual's behavior in conflict situations. And so the TKI tool, it basically has two axes. Let's call it the x-axis is cooperativeness and the y-axis is assertiveness. And as we look at this, I want you to recognize that as we become more assertive and less cooperative, we are competing. As we become less assertive and less cooperative, we're avoiding. So again, unassertive, uncooperative is avoiding. Assertive and uncooperative is competing. If I'm assertive and cooperative, I'm collaborating. If I'm unassertive and cooperative, I'm accommodating. And if I'm in the middle, I'm compromising. I personally love assertive people because assertive people, we get to collaborate. So somewhere between compromising and collaborating, that is my idea. But when we both collaborate, we both feel like we win. And that's why I think this TKI instrument is true, pure genius to help you uncover how to approach and how to measure someone else's approach behaviorally to conflict. So, for those who don't know, my father wrote this book called The Mouthtrap. One day, I think we'll hopefully rewrite it. It's been several years, but it's all about how to keep your foot out of your mouth. And one of the things in this book that I love is this idea of there's 4 components to keep in mind before you open your mouth. 4 components. First one, who am I talking to? Am I talking to a patient? Am I talking to a caregiver? Am I talking to a colleague? Am I talking to a doctor? Who am I talking to? How I talk to my wife is not how I talk to my kids. How I talk to my employees is not how I talk to my clients. What don't I know is the second thing. What don't I know? Is my reality different than them? What's going on in their life, etc. So you have this patient come in and he throws a total fit. He yells at your front desk, blasts everyone. How dare you? You charged my credit card and it's $150 and all this stuff. And you're like ready to be like, dude, we broke this down, all this stuff. Like, you're like, why is this guy freaking out? So the first thing you're going to ask yourself is, who am I talking to? Okay, I'm talking to a patient. Okay. What don't I know? What if he just lost his job? And the money, regardless if you went through it with them, the money was not expected. It came at a time where he wasn't ready for it. What is the outcome that you want? That's number 3. What outcome do you want? So at the end of the day, with this person, the outcome that I want is I want him to pay the bill and I want him to be respectful to my staff. So Jack Canfield has this success principles and he introduces this formula and I use this all the time. E plus R equals O. What do you think E stands for? E stands for the event. R stands for the response. O stands for the outcome. So to mathematically make this happen, I'm going to name the outcome that I want. From there, I'm going to figure out what event I need to do in order to get the response that creates that outcome. So all of a sudden I go to, we're going to call him Jack. Hey, Jack, first and foremost, I want to acknowledge, I know that sometimes it can be really stressful when a credit card charge happens. You weren't expecting it. And for that, I'm sorry. Can we step into my office? And I'd love to break it down with you to make sure we both make sure we see maybe we made a mistake. Maybe it's something didn't expect. Let's come up with the resolution together. How does that sound? And Jack says, oh, yeah, okay. So once Jack's in my office, normally I'm like, hey, tell me what's going on. Besides this, how are you doing? Anything else? I'm going to pull up the data. And normally I'll buy time while I'm pulling up the data. And Jack says, oh, it's been a tough go. Oh, what's going on, Jack? Jack says, you know what? I lost my job last week. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Jack. Jack, tell me again, what do you do? Oh, I sell printers. Oh, Okay. And do you like that job? I do very much so. Well, that's great to hear. I'm sure you're really good at it. Yeah, it's just a bummer. I worked for this place for 20 years and blah, 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 blah. And Jack goes into his whole story. And I'm allowing Jack to feel heard. So right off the bat, I'm creating a relationship with Jack because I'm driving towards that outcome. I'm creating this event with him in order to get the response. Jack says, yeah, blah, blah. I go, Jack, um, do you know this other company? And Jack says, no. And I go, I might have a connection for you. Would you like me to make an introduction? Oh, that'd be great. Jack, I'm going to make a couple calls for you and I'll follow up on that at the end of today. How does that sound? And I always end with how does that sound so I get agreement. That would be amazing. Thank you. Okay. Jack, guess what? I just found out what happened. I think there may have been a mix up. That amount was supposed to be charged, but let me show you this. We called the insurance. Here's the information. Would you like to call the insurance to double check? No, you know what, Brandon? I do recall this. I see my signature. I'm sorry. It's just been a hard day. No problem. Jack, I appreciate it. I'd rather clarify this with you. I'm glad you now know. Is there anything else I can do on this cycle to make you happy? Jack says no. I say, okay, Jack, I'm going to follow up at the end of today to make sure I connect you on that. And I'm here for you. If there's any other way I can help, please let me know. And I'm really sorry that this came unexpectedly. See, I fell on my sword again. That was part of the event. I fell on my sword a little. And people say, don't apologize for something you didn't do wrong. I'm like, sometimes that apology is part of the event because this isn't about ego. This is about getting the response needed to drive that outcome. And the fourth thing that I didn't tell you before I gave that example is, what's the right thing to say? Define the PC way to handle the situation. You heard that whole interaction. You're like, well, Brandon, you offered to help find him a job and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what I am doing is I am creating a relationship with him. I'm acknowledging what's going on with him. I'm driving towards an outcome that is ideal for both of us. And I'm saying it in a very professional way. Does it always go that way? No. Now, let's say in that conversation, Jack just kept getting upset and all this stuff. I may end up saying to Jack, hey, Jack, I know you're really upset. I totally get it. I acknowledge that. Don't tell me I'm upset. Okay, I'm sorry, Jack. I'm really just trying to be here as a support. Well, you guys charged my credit card wrong. Let's do this. Let's take a beat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go do research. I'm going to call your insurance. I'm going to call all this stuff. I'm going to bring up the information. How about we meet tomorrow or I call you back tomorrow? And let's just can you put together what you know and I know and we'll reconvene? Sometimes we need space as part of that event to get the right outcome. So those are the four components to keep in mind so that you keep your foot out of your mouth. Who am I talking to? What don't I know? What outcomes do I want with an event plus response equals outcome? What's the right thing to say? So one of the areas where conflict happens a lot is that we stop listening. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and they know what they're going to say before you finish your sentence? You already know they're not listening. They're just preparing their rebuttal. Listening is crucial, and it plays such a big part in this communication. So reasons for a listener getting lost in communication. So if they are not listening to you, one aspect may be they have a misunderstanding. You might have utilized terminology that they are not familiar with. Neuroblastoma, dysphagia, whatever that is. All of a sudden, you may have given information that they just don't even understand. Another, they may be not engaged. Read the room, okay? Are their eyes glossy? Are they looking at their phone? Are they zeroing past you? What are all those pieces? You need to know that. Another example is when they interrupt you before you complete your communication. And then the last is when a communication is too long. I had someone last week email my team and I'm not exaggerating. They took 25 minutes to read that email, and it could have been handled in a simple communication. They made it so long, and it was them just 36 bullets of stuff. It's very hard for people to process 36 bullets. So I just think it's important that you recognize how you create clear and concise communications, everything. Now, I've said this in other episodes, and I think it's crucial. You've probably heard this wherever you've heard me speak, but I use this thought process, and I think this is really clear, is, do you remember that movie, Harry Potter? In Harry Potter, there are these Dementors, and the Dementors come in and they change they get into the brain and they create toxicity. Don't listen to the voices in your head. We self-sabotage ourselves every day. Have you ever had that moment where you write your boss and you say, I'm running 10 minutes late, and the boss texts back, okay, in capital letters, and you're like, oh, he's mad at me. He's going to fire me. You create all this stuff. And all he was trying to do was to acknowledge your text. We self-sabotage ourselves. All of a sudden, it's so funny because my father-in-law, he is one of those communicators where if you get more than 2 words in an email or anything, that's just like amazing. So you write him and you say, hey, blah, 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 blah. Did you happen to do this? And I was planning to do this. And he'll literally write back K. He'll write one letter, K. Well, one day he wrote this letter and it was like 6 paragraphs. And right off the bat, we knew he used AI, artificial intelligence. My point is, often we interpret what we hear, see, or whatnot, and create our own communication in our head. Oh, they don't care about me. They don't want this. They don't this. Don't listen to it. Be careful. And so Dementors feed upon human happiness. They fuel the fire of conflict. They put false assumptions and situations in your head. I bet they're talking about me right now. I have to tell you, my daughter does this all the time. There's this drama of, they don't like me because they didn't say hi to me, or they didn't tell me I did a good job, so I must not have done a good job. I'm like, did they tell you didn't do a good job? No, but they didn't tell me I did a good job. All these things. And so we fuel this Dementor voice, and we have to get rid of it. Thoughts create feelings. Feelings create behavior, and all of a sudden we have Tabasco sauce in our water system. It is gross, it is sour, and it is really hard to get that foul taste out of the culture of our company. So don't let it happen. Did you know 69% of managers say they feel uncomfortable communicating with employees, especially during difficult conversations? That's reported from the Harvard Business Review. 69% of managers don't feel comfortable communicating with employees. That's really bad. As James Hume said, the art of communication is the language of leadership. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast and our episode on effective communication, tackling challenging leadership conversations. I hope you enjoyed it. It would mean the world to me if you would like this, if you would subscribe, if you would comment, if you would share with your community, because remember, together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you loved this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.